Yeah, so I do two things. I do something called the flued out retreat, which is like
Mm-hmm.
you get flued out, right? We book you on a flight either with us when we're going to the country so we can
Mm-hmm.
walk you through, or we book you to come out to meet us, my husband and I. And
Mm-hmm.
it's somewhat of the girlfriend experience. If I did a little bit of escorting, so it's like an updated, spiritual, grounded version of the GFE. And you get to come out and you get to be the girlfriend. And so you get to
Mm.
be the girlfriend of my husband and I, which is a very luxurious, spoiled place to be. And we introduce you to some tantra practices. We introduce you to some erotic breath work. We introduce you to some of the best sexual experience that you'll have in your life so that you can set your bar a little higher when you go home.
Hello, sexies. Welcome to Sisters of Sexuality 5 Shades of Play. Today's episode is sponsored by organiclovin.com.
Hello, sexies. You are listening to Sisters of Sexuality 5 Shades of Play, and I am Taylor Sparks, your host and sex goddess for the evening. We're here for the purposes of educating, entertaining, and informing you in all areas of sexuality, sexual health, kink, relationships, and the business of sex. I am so excited as I am every week to bring you a new guest, but baby, today for our season finale, I have a goddess for you. But before I bring her on, let me tell you a little bit about her. Amina is the founder of the Atlanta Institute of Tantra and Divine Sexuality, owner of Eros Retreat Home for Rest and Pleasure in Costa Rica, and the host of the Fix Your Sex podcast. She is a healer, sexual doula, sacred intimacy coach, sexological body worker, tantric sex educator, sexual revolutionary, and activist. Amina is passionate about the ability to heal and empower through love, sexual growth, and freedom. She is dedicated to showing people how to live authentically in their own pleasure in every moment. Amina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Girl, we were talking offline before we started recording about we met in passing briefly almost
Mhm.
10 years ago. And your business has grown so much. But even before we get to that, we got to start, of course, at the beginning. Like, how did this goddess become Goddess Amina?
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh, the road has been windy, to say the least, like I don't think there was no way that I had foresight to see where I'm at today. And I look back often. I started working as a sex surrogate under Dr. Dean Dow in the 90s, in the late 90s. And that kind of cracks me open into the possibility of sexuality. Up until then, I had really only known like Dr. Ruth, may she rest in peace. And like that was it. That was the only conversation that was available. Back then we had Cosmo magazine. We weren't online like we are now. There wasn't an abundance of information available.
Mm.
And when I was introduced to sex surrogacy, I was like, what? This is a thing? And if it hadn't been for the pay, the pay was so good that I couldn't like in the 90s. I was like, you say how much per hour?
Wait,
Okay.
wait, wait, wait. For those who don't know what a sex surrogate is, please explain.
Yeah, so I worked under the direct supervision of a psychologist who had a practice, and he worked largely with veterans who had suffered PTSD. He was a sex therapist who worked largely with veterans who suffered from PTSD. We're in Chicago, so not far from Great Lakes Naval Station. At the time, we had some posts for Army and Air Force too in the area. And as a sex surrogate, it's the idea of this, right? Like it's Mike Tyson said something along the lines of it's all theory till you get punched in the mouth. And it's that kind of thing, right? Like you go to therapy and they're telling you, they give you all these tools. Where do you practice the tools? Where do you get the opportunity to actually show up and see if anything's really working for you? And a sex surrogate kind of steps in and as in the work of sex therapy in what's called a triadic model, what we know now as a triadic model, where there's a therapist, the surrogate partner, and the client. And so, whatever they're working on in the therapy, the client gets to practice with the sex surrogate. We step in as lover, we step in as partner so that they get to actually practice whatever they're learning. And this is hella important, right? For folks, like how do they access in, like how do they move through it? It's not real. It's just studying until you actually get to do it. And so that's what a sex surrogate is. It can include things from the proper name today is surrogate partner. That's what most people are using to describe the work. I like sex surrogate, though. I like to keep it sexy. So
Yes.
I keep the memory of the old school title because that's what I was hired as.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah, and it gave me an opportunity to see sex as a profession, to see sex as something that was really needed. Also, like not just like, oh, I want to do it, which was a thing, right?
Right.
19, 20, yeah, I want to do it. But like, no, like that, that I actually need the reality of sex is a human need. And what happens when you don't have access to that? What happens for whatever reason, for a variety of reasons, but what happens to the human? And so that kind of cracked me open and set me on the course for the
Mhm.
work that I do now. Mhm.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you start off in sex surrogacy and you realize it's a thing, you enjoy this thing, and then where did the path lead you from there? What made you move into, different areas of sexuality from there?
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually got terrified after about a year of the work. I was like, what are you doing? Like
Mm,
I was young and nose wide open. I was terrified. And so I actually stepped away from the work and was like, let me go find some God or something. So I was started being religious actually. And
well,
it was
God parish has God is in the orgasm. So,
Yes, yeah, I know. Listen, so I started doing like all this soul searching and trying to figure it out. I got married and I was bored. That didn't last long. And then I had a massage, the short story is that I had a massage. At the time I had a business. My first business was a restaurant in Chicago, a cafe, and I was exhausted and I was lacking touch. And my husband at the time wasn't a very intimate person. And I went and got a massage. And the I wish I could find the woman that touched me in the way that she
mm,
did, because she touched me in a way that was so nurturing and so loving and so comforting. And it made me rethink my whole life. And
wow.
in the next couple of months, I quit my marriage. I quit my business and I went to massage school. I decided that I wanted to touch people and make them feel the way that I had felt because it felt like
Wow.
such magic. And once I started with body work again, then the sex came back real quick. And
Because
I
you're
was
a sex
like,
goddess. You can't get away
yeah,
from it.
you can't. You can run, but you can't hide. And
Mm-mm.
so that's what happened. I started working as a body worker. Before I even graduated from school, I started seeing clients. It was probably a month out before I started seeing clients.
Mm.
I had a little time left to graduation. And I think probably within 2 weeks, I was already back. I was into sensual massage, not back. It was tiptoeing into sensual massage. I was getting a
Mm.
lot of requests, hot young thing, touching on bodies, and people were
Yeah.
like, well, do you offer anything extra? And I was like, no. Mm-mm. And then I started looking into it, and I was like, well, you could offer something extra. And so I did. I started offering really loving, like I just started getting juicy with it and having fun and playing. And I think, I always wanted secretly somewhere deep inside to be a stripper. So I made it a dance. I made it a really erotic, sensual dance. I didn't have enough booty growing up to be a stripper. I can't twerk very well, but I can flow, baby. And so
Oh my God.
I made it into this beautiful, flowy, dream-like dance. And I would enter into trance and they would enter into trance with me. And they would orgasm in ways that they deserve to orgasm.
Yes, I'm loving all of this.
And that is how I kind of like, that was the development phase.
Okay. Yes.
And then after that, I just kept going and I kept studying. I learned there was something called a tantra massage, and I was like, ooh, what's that? I moved to Hawaii and everybody was advertising tantra massages. And I was like, I've never heard of this. Let me go look it
Yes.
up. So I went and got all these books on tantra, right? Like, oh, let me get all these books on Tantra. And so it led me down to, it actually led me into Buddhism. And
Okay.
and so, which actually ended up being really good. I learned so much about the embodiment of a practice, about breath and
Yes.
about being and things that I had never thought about. And I was trying to figure out how it added up to sex. So I started going to sex tantra workshops and I was
Okay. Okay.
a little confused, you know. I'm like, okay, here's this Buddhism tantra, and then there's I'm going to this, and they said it's tantra, and I'm not really seeing the overlap. So
Okay.
I started looking into Vedic tantra or Hindu tantra, right? Tantra that comes out of
Okay.
India.
Okay.
And I
Yes.
started
Yes.
studying that. I'm like, well, maybe it's in here. And so then I
You're
learned.
an eternal student, and I love this, you know. And like it's my mother years ago said, if anything you want to know, you can find it. You can find it in a book. And I
Yeah,
just got books
absolutely.
upon books upon books. I'm like, okay, I need to look that up. I need to figure that out.
Right, exactly. That's how I was just, I was on this, I'm in my late 20s at this point, and I'm
Yes.
like on this path. I'm trying to figure it out. I found a teacher that was in a Buddhist lineage of Tantra, uh, a Tibetan lineage of Tantra. And and his explanation was so clear to me. He was just like, well, it was Reggie Ray is the teacher, and it's in Vajrayana Tantra lineage, and he opens up his book on Tantra with this, like, kind of just acknowledging that they're like, I'm in the West, and
Okay.
here I know what Tantra means here. And I know why it lands there because this is such a powerful tool for the body. And
Mm.
when we awaken the body, we will awaken all of the body. And I get it. And he said, as long as that something along the lines, and I'm gonna horribly misquote him, but something along the lines that as long as they find their path to their body, right? Whatever the
Yes.
pathway is, then
Yes.
and move into tantra, then how can I be mad at that or something along the lines? And then I read
Sure.
it a long
Sure.
time ago, and I was like, yeah, yeah,
That's it.
that's
We're
it.
going to get them into the body, and there is nothing wrong with the body.
Right, exactly. And
Goodness.
so that really helped me just kind of settle in. And ever since then, I've been like, this is what that can look like. I've had people be like, well, that's not tantra, and this is not. I'm like, well, you can say that. I'll give you that. But this is what my understanding and what I've learned, and I have enough books written from scholars from way back when and from
Right.
today. And
Right.
I've sat in enough classrooms. I've sat under, I haven't sought refuge under any particular lineage, because in Buddhism, that's what you do. Is,
Right.
kind of like becoming the member of the church, if you will. I haven't
Hmm.
done that, but I really believe in the body as the most powerful medicine and the most sacred thing and the most, just like liberating, the biggest tool for liberation that we have. And so I'm
It,
gonna hang out in it till I die.
oh my gosh, it is. It is. And what an amazing journey that you have been on. I was in and out and back and forth and trying to not pay attention to my sex, so to speak, because
Mm-hmm.
other people said, and then I'm like, this shit is. And
Uh-huh.
now, even as a seasoned woman who has been in the sexual realm for many years now, and publicly, there are still people who are trying to, what's the word, trying to push upon me that I'm just too much.
Right,
I'm like, do
right,
y'all know how the fuck old I am? Do y'all
right,
leave me the fuck alone about
right.
me and the things that I'm doing and whom I'm doing it with and how?
Yeah,
Anyway, I'm just gonna go to Mexico. I don't have to deal with this.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
have to deal with
and we're always gonna be too much for somebody.
many
And that's
bodies.
okay. Many
Yes.
bodies, many somebodies. And that's okay. Go on over there and let me be too much for you. Don't come over here. I don't need to know I'm too much. You don't have to run around the world telling everything that's too big for you that is too big. Find what fits, find what works, and stay your ass over there. Because over here we do pleasure. Over here we do joy.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, yes. So So I want to know, so when did you start doing like retreats and working with, either couples or women one-on-one? Was it
Mhm.
first just with women and then couples, or did you just kind of expansively say, listen, all of you all are touch starved? Because a
Right.
lot of us are. I was in a marriage that at one point towards the end became touch starved. I was like, thank God
Mhm.
for my cat and dog, but
Right.
touch is so important to the human body, and we are led to believe, I think falsely so, that touch is not as good and that it had to lead to sex, and
Uh-huh.
that just not understanding. So tell me your thought process just on what touch does for the human body, whether it's sexual or not.
Yeah, I think touch is such an interesting and misunderstood part of who we are, right? Like there have been countless studies done on what happens to the body when touch is neglected, yet no work is being done to promote touch as a true healing modality, touch as a needed part of relationships. Especially here in the West, I travel a lot and I see, we just got back from a month in Thailand where touch is like embedded into the culture.
Yes,
You know what I
yes.
mean? Like the massages are, $6 to $8 on every corner.
Mm-hmm.
When they're not working on someone else, they're working on each other. People hold
Mm-hmm.
hands, people, even bump into each other more. Like people are not like,
Yeah.
oh, you a
Don't
New
touch
York
me.
subway, get away from me.
Yeah.
And so you could see like just a different also level of happiness and in the people. And we have been so misaligned from our bodies, not knowing that um touch is what is saving our lives. There are chemicals that are released when we experience human touch and connection, chemicals in our body that help to stabilize us. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
won't get on my soapbox about
Get on the box.
a
Get
medical
on the
and
box.
right, a medical and pharmaceutical industry that
Yes.
really does very well financially based on us not being able to produce certain hormones and chemicals that we would be able to produce on our own through some activities like touch, like sex, like orgasm.
Yes.
But
They try
but
to shut
that's
it all down.
that's yeah, that's there. That's in it, right? And so also like what type of commercialism and capitalism is no longer necessary if I'm getting my needs met in one way. I'm not out spending so much money to try and figure out what needs could be met and what other needs I can
Right.
get met to give me some serotonin, to give me some
Some
dopamine.
dopamine.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
all of that is playing into our lack of access to touch and how people like you and I, workers like you and I, folks that are in the industry of touch, in the industry of sex, in the industry of human connection, are
Mm-hmm.
really silenced as a part of the way that it is the
Yes.
and it's not just social media, medical journals, psychology and psychiatry practices, like where they'll put you in a straitjacket before they'll give you a hug. That's the
Mm-hmm.
world that we're living in. And so when we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at touch, we're forgetting that we're looking at the first medicine that we had. The first thing that happens when you came out of the pussy was that
Yeah.
somebody put you on their chest, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
if you were cut out, if you had a cesarean section, the goal was to get you skin to skin contact as soon as
As,
possible.
as
So
soon as possible.
we know it's real. We just are pretending in a society like after that moment it's not as necessary. And it's harming us in ways that we don't even realize.
And
Mhm.
it's you are so correct. And it's starting even with our children by medicating our children, by
Mhm.
making our children sit still, by
Right.
taking away things like recess, by them, like you said, the touch, the having flag football, the tackling in the playground, to running around and expending all of that energy.
Mhm.
And then you medicate them because Johnny won't sit still. Johnny wasn't supposed to sit still. I am so glad, because if I was raised in now, if I was a small child, they would medicate me.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
sit still now. So,
Right.
and I'm not going to sit still. And then they want to label. My background is in human behavior, and I studied human behavior for DISC and personalities. And I remember Dr. Rome saying, some personality types, your high I's, your high D's, they are never going to sit still, and they're not designed to sit still. And you keep medicating them instead of giving them something to do to expend that energy. You
Right.
see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that just continues. I mean, I was diagnosed as a child with ADHD or ADD at the time. And my mother refused medication when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
But we were homeschooled at first. So mom, we got to do whatever we were not whatever we wanted, but
Mm-hmm.
we were quite feral. And so going into regular schools there, they just didn't know what to do with us. And I think about that and how that has impacted my adulthood, and that, like, I know I got to see both sides of the fence and I know what
Yes.
side I like better. And
Yes.
that allows me to be a certain type of me, the type of me that I
Mm-hmm.
was designed to be. It allows me to not have to shut down parts of me. But really, that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a world that's demanding you to shut down parts of who you are
Yes.
to fit into the mold that they said is best. And
Yes.
we have to start making some real conscious decisions. Like, do I really agree with them that
Mm.
what they said is best? Is that
Mm.
really what I think? Or
Mm.
do I think that maybe something else is best? Do I have the possibility, the potential? Is it in my reality to even consider that something
Yes.
else is best for me? And that is what the the liberation through sexual pleasure and energy. That's when I say I'm a sexual activist, that's what I mean. I'm moving towards our liberation, but it's only because we got to come back home to our bodies to
Yes.
experience it.
We'd like to welcome our newest sponsor, Motor Bunny. Motor Bunny was created out of restless curiosity and sheer frustration. After spending months looking for a sex machine that made use of connective technology and didn't cost a fortune, it was clear that a lack of competition in the category meant a lack of innovation and disturbingly sparse options. The Motor Bunny founder set out to fill a major hole in the industry, and in 2015, Motor Bunny was introduced as the world's first wireless Bluetooth, and long distance controlled sex machine. Mortar Bunny's mission is to empower creative sexual experiences by reducing the financial risk of experimentation. With powerful machines that vibrate all the way to 11, with attachments that can either rotate or thrust, Mortar Bunny machines are ideal for unlocking creativity and your personal pleasure. Visit motorbunny.com and use code 11 and receive $50 off of any of their amazing machines. That is motorbunny.com with code LOVEN.
Mm-hmm.
So were you working, did you start, as you come to realize, okay, this is my journey. This is
Mm-hmm.
as a sexual advocate, a sexual activist, you know, are you reaching out to women first again? Are you reaching out to couples? Are you doing group events? What was
Yeah.
the journey like for you initially? Like, is like you're going to start one on one, or you started with groups? How did you
So
first introduce
I,
yourself?
yeah, I really started with men.
Okay,
Um,
with men, yes,
they were just easy,
they are
easier to
very
act.
easy,
They're so easy. Thanks, guys.
so easy.
Um,
We love you.
we love you, but thank you. But it was easier to access. This
Mhm.
was long before the Craigslist killer, and so I could just post an ad up there. It was really easy for me to access men in that way. And for a long time, my clientele was about 80% male.
Okay,
And then I would say probably around 2015, 2014, 2015 was when it started to shift a little bit. My
okay,
language started to shift a little bit.
mhm.
And I started to host women's circles. And so
Okay.
then I started getting women talking about sex. We started looking at our pussies. We started,
Hmm.
teaching about sex toys and ways to masturbate without the genitals, ways to masturbate through breath. And I started just having little groups. It wasn't like I was teaching per se. I like to say I was
Sure.
leading. I had
Okay.
completed my yoga teacher training, and so I was kind of incorporating it with movement and breath.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and I had, I had an office in Berkeley for a bit, And in that time, I was getting more visibility, I would say. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
maybe even before then, I think I might have been at 90% male. And then Berkeley was like, all right, we're now at 20. And then it
Okay.
started expanding from there. And then I got to a point when I was in Atlanta that I said, I am tired of male
Mm.
clients.
It
Um, and I want to,
happens.
it happens, and I want to switch it. I want to switch my demographic. I want to switch my base. And at that point, I was working with couples, but just a little bit. They were starting to come in, but mostly it was like a man dragging his wife or partner, saying,
You need to
you
learn how to do something with that vagina of
right,
yours.
she teaching squirting classes. You got to learn how to squirt. Uh,
Like you're a new toy truck. Girl, that is
yeah,
that
right.
is that is the least pleasurable orgasm for me.
Listen, I have had women that looked at me and looked at their husband or partner and be like, what in the fuck have you brought me to? And I'm like, you haven't explained where she was going. I had to change everything, honey. They
Oh
just
my
would show
God.
up. I had one woman tell me, she was like, I mean, I might be interested in it, but I'm on my period. He didn't tell me nothing. And so I was
Oh
just,
no.
so I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I am tired of these men. I'm done. And I told myself we were going to switch. I said, I wanted to flip. I want to have 20% male clients and 80% women clients.
Yes.
And that day,
Excuse
that day something changed in even the way that I was speaking to people. And in 30 days, my clientele had flipped and I was working mostly with women. Just the way that I was speaking to people changed because I wasn't talking to men anymore. I was talking to women, and that changed things. And they heard me, and then they came. And since then, I've worked mostly with women. So my clientele base now is probably about 60 to 65% women. I get
Okay.
about 25% couples. And now the men are a little scared. So I only get those in sprinkles. I work with trans folks as well. So I get trans women and men, non-binary folks as well. And
Okay.
but the men tiptoe in now. And I kind of like it. I wish I had more men that would come to
Right.
events. I started hosting retreats in 2017,
Mhm.
full-blown international retreats in 2017. And so we would always have like 4 men and 40 women, right? But
So
um,
why international? Why did you decide to do, out of the country instead of something in the country? And where did you start?
I started in Costa Rica, and
Okay, yes, it's
I
beautiful there.
just it's so beautiful. And I loved Costa Rica. One of my closest friends got married there back in 2012. And I was like, one day I'm gonna live in Costa Rica. I love it here. And I was already living in Hawaii, where it's, pretty fucking beautiful. Like you don't
Mhm.
get prettier than that in the US. But I was really, one of the reasons why I did international retreats was I wanted people to get away. uh, so much has changed, but in 2017, most international phone plans made you disconnect,
Mm,
right? Once you
right.
get outside the US, you weren't still answering your phone. Wi-Fi was not what we know it now. We forget how quickly we've been advancing in the last, what is, 7, 8 years, 9 years. We just forget how quickly things have turned around. And so I like the idea that they had to be present. They couldn't check in on their daughter or son all day long and they boothing and tell everybody everything that was happening.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I liked that. And I also found it price wise to be more affordable for us to leave the country than to go to
Mhm.
somewhere warm and beautiful. I mean, Texas and Florida kind of off the grid for me. Like I'm not doing those two states for a variety of reasons we don't need to get into. But I think most people listening, like, yeah, I mean, I hear you. And those are the warm states, right? So the other option is California, which is really expensive. And for people coming from the East Coast, a very long flight, 4.5 hours. And I realized like, well, we could get to the Caribbean in 2.5 hours.
Yes.
And it's much more affordable for me to rent a mansion down here than it is in California for a week. It's much more affordable for me to hire a chef down here.
Yes. And the
And that
food is
may
so much better.
and the food is so much better. And the water
Yes.
is so much warmer. There's no warm water in California. They lied to you. That water is ice cold.
Girl, I
And
know. I lived there. I lived in
right?
LA for 11 years. I was like,
Yeah. I thought I
mm.
was moving to LA when I moved to Hawaii and I got to Santa Monica. I had signed the lease and everything. I was like, you can keep this deposit. I found Hawaii. Never mind. This is,
No,
yeah,
you did not.
I did. I did. I abandoned a deposit. I was making good sex worker money. So I was like, money shmoney. I'm out.
It
But
flows. That's why they call it cash flow. It comes and it
yeah,
goes.
it comes and it goes. But that water was ice cold. And so here we are somewhere we could be butt naked, get in the ocean butt naked, feel the sand on our toes warm, flirt and dance in Spanish. Of course, this sounds better than anything that I'm gonna get in the US. Hawaii is the next best thing. I know it, but that's an 11-hour trip from the East Coast. And it is an expensive ticket and a more expensive space to stay and more
Yeah.
expensive food. How do you make it accessible to people? So I was making retreats really accessible to people who come from a similar background like me. I grew up
Hmm.
and my mother was, divorced young. And so it was a mostly single parent household. I went back and forth between my father's house and my mom's house on plane. But I was like a single one income, some money coming in from support from dad, but like
Sure,
that,
sure.
like a different upbringing and like a different understanding and relationship with money. I'm not a trust fund baby. I'm not coming from this. So what do people like me? Because I'm looking at some retreats I want to go to and they're 8, 9,000, 10,000. That's not including the flight. Where does someone like me um, go to retreat to? And where is it
Mhm.
safe to explore sex and sexuality? 'Cause that's the other thing. A lot of the spots in Florida, when I did look, and I did look for a little bit, there would be houses
Yes.
that were like, your neighbors are over there. They're going to see somebody's titty and they're going to call somebody and I'm going to get in trouble. You know what I mean? So
I do.
we, you do. And so I wanted to be free of all of that. And so I launched the first one in Costa Rica and it sold out like immediately. People were like, Costa Rica. There weren't that many people hosting retreats. Now we have a lot more now. People of
Yeah,
color,
this everybody.
yeah, everybody. And so that's where it started. And then, I did Jamaica and I did Mexico a couple times and we started going to Cuba, which has been fun and exciting
I have
and
not been to Cuba yet.
you should
I've
join
been with a
us.
Cuban, but I have not. I've been with a
Close enough,
Cuban.
close enough, close
Well,
enough.
he grew up in an island. Now it's real close, but
Yeah. But yes, we've gone abroad over across the ocean a couple times and
Yes.
now I'm hosting retreats in Panama as well. And I really like, some 40 to 60% of the people at my retreats are on their first passport stamp. And I love that.
Wow, that's
Right.
wonderful for them. Oh.
Yeah. And like it's the accessibility, it's the
Hmm.
trust,
Hmm.
and it feels good to be able to like when I hear somebody say that, I'm like, what? Yes. And it keeps me grounded. Also
Yes,
because it keeps me remembering like just because you started traveling, just because you was on a plane going to your daddy house at 9, doesn't mean
right,
that everyone else has been flying as much as you. Just
for
because
sure.
I was in the army when I was younger. I was in the Army Reserves, and just because you were flying around the world on the Army's dollar, doesn't mean that other people have any idea of
Right.
what it's like to leave the
Yes,
country.
I
To
understand.
Yeah, and so that's how I got started, and I love it. It's a turning point, I think, for retreats
Hmm.
in the world. Just
Hmm.
it's very crowded space, and so
Yeah.
I'm looking at things a little bit differently. But I started working with one-on-one retreats or two-on-one retreats, and that
Hmm.
has been just joyful. Just
Tell me
having
about it. Tell us about it.
I'll have a client that wants to work with me, and since I'm not in the States anymore, I just invite them to come down and be with me where I'm at. So I do this
Where
thing.
are you, Amina?
In this moment, I'm in Panama. Think about it. Last week I was
Oh,
in Costa Rica. 2 weeks ago I was in Thailand. Or three
I
weeks ago
know
I
a
was in
group. Yeah, I
Thailand.
know a group of Black expat women that are down there, and we may know, but
Yeah.
we'll talk. We'll talk about that. So tell me
Yeah.
about the one-on-one and the two-on-one.
Yeah, so I do two things. I do something called the flued out retreat, which is like
Hmm.
you get flued out, right? We book you on a flight either with us when we're going to the country so we can
Hmm.
walk you through, or we book you to come out to meet us, my husband and I. And it's somewhat of the girlfriend experience. If I did a little bit of escorting, and so it's like an updated, spiritual, grounded version of the GFE, and you get to come out and you get to be the girlfriend. And so you get to
Mm.
be the girlfriend of my husband and I, which is a very luxurious, spoiled place to be. And we introduce you to some Tantra practices. We introduce you to some erotic breath work. We introduce you to some of the best sexual experience that you'll have in your life so that you can set your bar a little higher when you go home. And
Yes.
so that's one of the ways that we have people come. And then I have couples that come out to do some very deep work to heal their relationship, to expand their
Mhm.
relationship, to shift their relationship. I'm in a female-led relationship, and so I have folks that come out there looking at shifting the dynamic of their relationship,
Mhm.
maybe exploring power dynamics or kink. Some folks that need some deep work around communication and
Mhm.
things like
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
establishing a sense of safety in the body. I teach them how to work on each other's body with body work and all the things, depending on how many days we have together.
Sure, sure.
And it's one of my favorite things. Sometimes I have solo folks that'll come out and they're just coming out for the same stuff. I do a lot of coaching, so they just want some coaching around their erotic selves. Um,
Mhm.
and some body work, and we do a lot of things to help people like really feel what's going on, to know where their orgasm is alive at in their body, like what's
Yes.
happening in the expansion and contraction of sex. And so that is always fun and playful and joyous.
Nice. That
Yes.
is amazing.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds like such a really it's like those who are in the non-sex world who are coaches when they do their VIP day
Yes,
or their VIP
exactly.
weekend, except this is a much more intimate as well as healing thing because it's not most of the VIP days are always based around business.
Mm-hmm,
I'm the
mm-hmm.
business coaches that I know, and of the coaches I know that are doing personal work or intimacy work, I don't think anyone else is doing that.
I haven't seen it, but that's where I got it from. My biz coach, when I went out to a one on like a small, it wasn't a one-on-one, it was a small, but it was only like 8 of us. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wait a minute, why am I not doing a smaller, more intimate
Yeah,
thing?
yeah,
Why am I doing everything so big? Why am I working so hard?
that
And,
part.
and not really enjoying as much as I could. And so shifting that put me in a position where I am having the time of my life at work, which
Mm-hmm.
means that my clients are getting such a better deal and such a better
Well,
end of the
yeah,
stick, you
all the
know?
attention
Mm-hmm.
to be able to kind of pick your brain, so to speak, to ask you all of the questions that they've been wanting to ask somebody, questions that they just came up with, thoughts about their bodies, their vaginas, their penis, or the
Yeah.
sex they're having, the sex they were thinking about having. To be able to sit with you and your husband and be like, those butt
Yeah.
plugs. I just think about those butt plugs, but I don't know if my butt's right for those butt plugs. Like,
Right, right.
I
And then I'm
mean,
like, well, look at all
I,
the different types of butt plugs that I have here. And
and
let's
I'm leaning
let's
over to my side with the sex toys, right? I'm like, well, let's talk
uh
about butts,
yeah.
and that is such an interesting, huh? You give me thought. We're gonna have to have an offline consultation
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
about this. So you have this. So you started with the men, and then we like flipped it, and we're working more with women, and then we were really big, and we were out of the country, and we were all over the world, and having a great time, and then we kind of went small again, or not
Yeah.
again. In addition to, I should say, having this small, intimate one-on-one or two-on-one experience for individuals and or couples.
Hmm.
Now what? Now where?
Yeah, now I'm in this space, and I will say where I live now in Panama, it's beautiful. I'm on the ocean, and the tide goes out every day and comes back every
Mm,
day,
yes.
and sometimes twice a day. You just gotta follow the tide charts, but I get to watch the ebb and the flow. And I'm reminded of the fact that like that is nature and I am nature and that there is an ebb and flow. And sometimes capitalism just has you trying to stay in the flow. And so I'm reminded of the ebb. So right now I'm in the ebb and I'm in this creative space. Um, I'm doing a lot of mentorship and development work with those that are coming up in the industry because there was no paved path for me. It was rocky and windy. And and I've been gathering all of that information that I've had to learn. And so I have a course where I train and certify sexologists. Um,
Wonderful. Oh,
and
amazing.
yeah, and I do a mentorship program. I have a six-figure sexologist mentorship program that I do. I work with folks who are in the work but want to make a real viable living in the work.
And I have to
And
say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it
mhm,
is so important that you, in particular, are doing this work
yeah.
because I know that you saw what I saw during COVID, where everybody and their mama became a sex goddess, a sex coach, a coach,
Mm-hmm.
and they were going to these others who were training them, and I
Right.
don't know what, and then they were like, yes, so I'm a coach now. I'm like, and I not knocking them being a coach, but I would question like, are you even having sex?
Right.
Have you
And
ever
I,
had sex? Like not that you have to be older, you know, to have the knowledge. You can get, you know what I mean? But there were
yeah.
some that were had
Mm-hmm.
popped up, and I'm like,
It's a lot of pop. It's pop-up era. It's the pop-up
yeah,
era.
like, are you even fucking like
Yeah.
not just have you had some sex, like you've had
Mm-hmm.
one boyfriend and
Right.
now you want to coach couples.
Right. Yeah.
Is
No,
that
I've
just me seeing that, or you feel
no,
the
it's
same?
absolutely not. It's folks that like have no communication skills. And then it's I would get it also because I started this program in 2017 and have slowly been, it was started
Building.
our first class had 5 students, right? So and just slowly building up. But I would get folks that will come to me and they're like, I want to be a sex coach. I will sit at the bar and people will just tell me their whole life story and I give the best advice to my friends. I'm like, coaching is not advice giving. It is advisement at times, but it is not advice giving. And just because people want to trauma dump on you at a bar does not mean that you're going to be a good coach. It just means that you're an easy mark.
And
And
you listen.
so, and you listen, right? You have low boundaries. And so you are just allowing them to take up that space that you have came out. I mean, when I go to the bar, I'm either looking for some loving or I'm looking for, some type of a good time. I'm not looking
Yeah, some
for
tequila.
Right. I'm definitely looking for tequila. I'm not looking for a trauma story when I go sit at the bar. And so if people are trauma dumping there, they might be invading on like you might not be remembering why you left the house. It probably wasn't to get trauma dumped on. And so, but that's so those are the people that are like, oh, let me go get this training oftentimes. And under the wrong leadership or training program, I mean, there was a program that popped up where you could become a sex doula in a weekend. And I'm like, do
Oh,
you really think that's possible? To really put the lives of people's entire lives and relationships in the hand of someone that has gone through a weekend training.
for 10 hours. And the other, I, I know in my heart of hearts, okay, that what you offer, I've not taken one of your classes, but I know in every cell of my body that what you bring to people is from the freaking ancestors. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I know that, and not just our ancestors, the Eastern ancestors, the study that
Hmm.
you have done under
Yeah.
Buddhism and Tantra and Tibetan Tantra, that this is not just a weekend of work, and that you see people and that you feel people.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
some of the others don't have that history. They don't have they don't have the history of the energy work. epigenetically
Right.
in their blood to pass that in their genes to pass that on. I'm not saying they don't know the steps.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah, the science is researchable and easily regurgitatable.
Yes.
And that is there, right? But I know how fragmented the science is when it comes to the body, particularly when it comes to the woman's body, even more particularly when it comes to the Black woman's body, right? And
Yeah.
so like I'm looking through a different lens and a different
Mm-hmm.
approach, one that includes those of us who have been disenfranchised and or harmed through scientific study. I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at it through the lens of Buddhism, which says the whole body is one and there is no
Yes.
mind and body, it's all one. I'm
Yes.
looking at it through the lens of pleasure activism, to quote Adrienne Marie Brown, and like what it looks like to actually be in control of your pleasure, to seek
Mm-hmm.
out your pleasure intentionally. I'm looking at it through the power of the erotic, to quote Auntie Audre Lorde, and like what it means to see our erotic as power and
Yes.
how we move in life. And so this is life coaching when you look at it
Mm-hmm.
through all the ways it shows up,
Yes.
because
Yes.
everything ain't no Lamborghini would have went out of business a long time ago if they weren't buying them because they wanted to get fucked.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
everything we're doing, we're peacocks at the end of the day. We're
For
all out here,
sure.
right? And so it's like everything that we're doing is around the sex, right? We're walking around, we're doing our thing.
Yes.
And so you can't, and then we get into these relationships and they're falling apart. We get into these relationships and our sex is drying up. We're getting, because we forgot the fundamental part about who we are. And my
Mm-hmm.
program, my teachings, my practices, my own like daily living is around my own remembrance of this divinity. When I say I am a goddess, I mean that shit. Like I am at my
Same.
altar. I'm at
Listen.
right. Like
Same.
this is not for play. And I don't care. I'm not knocking anybody else that doesn't see themselves as divine as I am. I'm just saying it's a different platform. My program is a different platform. My students are learning through a different lens. I have students that have come through a Walden University, which
Mm-hmm.
trains most of the a great number of the sexologists. I have students that have come through other sex ed U and like
Mm-hmm.
countless other sex ed programs or sexology programs, but they don't have the je ne sais quoi necessary to actually move into the work because they don't have any practices.
They don't
They
have the
know.
holistic portion that they don't understand. Like you said, it's all one thing. It's not
Mm-hmm.
your genitals and what you do with it and then talk about it. If you, there has, I've always said you have to have the connection. If
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
not connected here, here, and there, you're again fragmented. It has to
Right.
have the connection. I had somebody say to me, Goddess, that's a title that must be earned. I'm like, oh, trust me, I have earned it.
Mm-hmm.
And you will
Mm-hmm.
address me as such.
Yeah.
It's been earned.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Right.
don't make me beat you.
Right.
Like,
No, I've had it happen so many times. I like to remind people that the fact that I went from being in water in the amniotic sac to coming out and being able to call in breath and air without any training proves my divinity right there, just by being born. And so
yes.
you can live in your bubble if you want to, and you can refer to you however you see yourself. But I will be referred to as goddess, as I am divine, and that is the
Yes.
reality. And I'm not gonna be like we started off. We're not gonna be for everybody. Somebody's gonna be like, well, that is blasphemous, and that is I don't want. That's not real sexology, and that's not. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with you having whatever belief system you have over there,
Over there.
over
I
there.
I love Dita Von Teese's. I love to quote her one quote. I don't know all her stuff, but I love her quote. She's like, "You could be the most juiciest, ripest peach on the tree, and there will still be somebody that don't like peaches."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. It is so true.
It's
It's
so
so
true.
true. And so I just, yeah, my practice is focusing on getting more folks that are out there in the world who can defragmentize mind and body, put us back together
Mm-hmm.
in sexuality spaces, in play spaces, and in all the ways that we show up in the world. And I
Yes.
still see clients. I still have, I work with about 6 to 8 clients a year. So I've
Okay.
definitely downsized. And then I still have my, retreats here and there. I'll pop in, but mostly right now I'm just in the ebb and watching the tide pull away and feeling
Okay.
into the newness of creation. I'm writing a lot. I'm launching I got a couple of new things that are launching. I got a new podcast that's launching. I can't really talk about it. We have our kickoff party today.
What?
Um, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal for me, and it'll be on a pretty
You could
big network.
you could tell because
The whisper, yeah, the
this won't
whisper
be
is
out until later this week.
okay, great. So the whisper is that it's on Pushkin, which is Malcolm Gladwell's network, from the Who of the Tipping Point, and so I'll be
You
doing
didn't hear it
that.
here first, but you
You
heard it.
didn't hear it first, and
Because you'll be announcing it later.
yeah, later today, actually. So
Okay,
by
okay.
the time they hear that, yeah, we have our launch meeting after this couple in about an hour and a half.
Oh my God, how exciting
That's
for you.
super.
I am
Yeah.
so proud of you. I
Yeah,
am
so
so proud of you.
thank you. Thank
Oh
you.
my God,
And I
Amina.
just finished doing some training through Montauk Chia's lineage when I was in Thailand. And so
Okay,
I'm really
okay.
moving to incorporate and build, I birthed a lineage here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'm really in this space of just deep acknowledgement. I'm like, this is a lineage that has been birthed
Sure.
through the teachings that I have. And this is what it looks like today to be birthing a
Mm-hmm.
lineage. And I want this work to expand beyond me and after me. And I want us to be
Mm-hmm.
able to find our bodies long after I'm gone. So
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. Oh my God, Amina, this has been just a joy to have you on. I am so glad to reconnect with you.
Likewise, likewise. It's so
It,
good to see you and to see your smile and to be in conversation with you. And it just feels really communal. And I love, even though we are a couple of countries away, just being in community with you on this side of the healing.
yes, yes. Well, we're really close, actually. I mean, I'm just in Cancun. What am I, 2 hours
Yeah.
away?
I don't even know if the flight's that long.
I don't
Honestly,
think
it
so. And
might
I've
be
never been
less.
to Panama, and there was a girl that was asking me to come down. But so tell us what's coming up next for you, podcast
Mhm.
and any events that you have
Mm.
coming up that is still available that you have space in.
Yeah, so one of my biggest projects that I launched last year was Authentic Consent, which is a consent training course to get us in a space where we can practice some tools from nonviolent communication, be more deeply embedded into the work of Betty Martin and her wheel of consent, and really move into our body to discover our yeses and our nos that live within. And
Wonderful.
so I just really want, I see a lot of harm and potential for harm in spaces where people don't have their voice. People are new to the kink space or new to the play space or new to opening up their relationships, and they
Yes.
just lose their voice. And so right now, what I'm really passionate about is inviting people and calling people in to become trained facilitators in authentic consent so that they can show up in their spaces and make them safer. There's an online class. There's also a in-person class at Sex Down South this year. I'll be back at
Oh,
Sex Down
perfect.
South for their
Perfect.
10-year
Yay.
anniversary.
Yes.
So I'll be there leading the class for part of pre-con. And there's also ASEC credits available in case you are a therapist or practitioner and you're
Mm-hmm.
hearing this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one of the things that's really active and alive for me. Otherwise, my trainings, all of that you can find at atltantra.org. I'm always, enrollment is ongoing. It stops in October and we reset for the year, but it's an ongoing enrollment all year long until October. So that's still open. When you hear this, we'll still be accepting folks to come in.
Perfect. Perfect.
I have a beautiful couples retreat coming up here in Panama in September. So details of that. All of my things are closed to only open to members. And
Okay.
that's because of our legal organization. We're organized as a church, and
Okay.
you can become a member for $1. So I don't want you to
Okay.
think it's not a money grab. It's just we have some legal obligations that we have to care
Yes.
for. So it's $1 a month or $12 for the year that we ask, and then you'll have access to some of the other things. I have workshops and classes that are ongoing
Yes.
inside the membership section. And that's I think most of the juiciness. Like everything else is I'm at the pool.
Yeah,
I'm
girl
in
said I'm at the pool. Well,
otherwise.
if you want to stay up to date with Amina and her juiciness, of course, we will have all of her links in the show notes for her website at atltantra.org. You can find her in ATL Tantra on IG, ATL Tantra Fest on Facebook, and of course, also LinkedIn. We will also have the show notes to stay up to date with Sisters of Sexuality. If you have any questions for me or any of my guests, you feel free to email us at sistersofsexuality@gmail.com. And you can find us on all social media under Sisters of Sexuality. Be sure to visit our sponsors, motorbunny.com. You can use coupon code LOVIN and receive $50 off of any Motor Bunny machine. And of course, our sister site and sponsor, Organic Lovin'. Use code SOS15 and receive 15% off of your first order. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. And if this episode resonated with you, please consider subscribing, and as a way of supporting the growth of our channel, if you're watching us on YouTube, and allow us to keep informing, educating, and entertaining you. And until next time, in the beginning of our season 6, stay sexy and bye-bye.
Organic Lovin', for the bodies you love to love. How do people describe you? Are you curious, playful, maybe sensual, adventurous? How about open-minded? The truth is, no matter who you are, Organic Lovin' has something to indulge your fantasies. We offer only organic, natural, and eco-friendly intimate body products, including vegan condoms, organic lubricants, body-safe sex toys, and sex-positive books. You won't find anything harmful in our products or toys. We also have a full range of other experiences, including erotic seminars and exotic adult-only vacations. Receive our adult subscription box for a monthly sexual delight. Be educated, entertained, and informed. Organic Lovin', for her, for him, for you, for the bodies you love to love. Visit organiclovin.com. We offer shipping worldwide, so stop by the site anytime. Organic Lovin', that's LOVEN.com.